Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are plunging right into a whole stack of sources, all looking at one thing: Shiba Inu, or SHIB.
Yep, SHIB. And specifically where experts and even AI think its price might be going, looking towards June 2025.
That's the focus. We've pulled together insights from places like Finbold, Times Tabloid, 3 Commas, CryptoRank, Outlook India,
The Crypto Basic, Pin2 News, the Crypto Updates, Markets.com. Quite a list.
It is. And our mission really is to cut through the chatter, pull out the key nuggets, and try to understand what the core insights are. You know, what's really driving SHIB's price.
And why these predictions can look so different depending on who or what you ask, even between different AI models.
Exactly. So let's set the scene first. What's the current landscape for SHIB, say, late May 2025?
Right. So the sources generally put the price somewhere in the, let's see, 0.0000000001046 range around then.
Okay. And it's certainly been a bumpy ride lately, hasn't it?
Oh, yeah. Volatile for sure. We saw that notable drop, remember, from around 0.000000001 on May 23rd.
Right after that news about potential tariffs hit. Just shows how fast these external things can impact crypto, especially something like SI.
Absolutely. Around that time, some sources were saying it was down like 5% in 24 hours, maybe 12% over the week.
Ouch. What about the technicals? Anything stand out?
Well, the basics mentioned, the 50-day simple moving average, tracking the recent trend, was slightly below the price. So maybe hinting at a mild short-term uptrend trying to form.
Trying being the operative word.
Yeah, because the 200-day SMA, the longer-term view, was still above the price. That suggests the broader picture is still, well, a downtrend.
Okay. And the RSI, the relative strength index.
Sitting right smack in the middle. Pretty neutral, around 54.24 according to one source. Not really screaming overbought or oversold.
So technically kind of mixed, leaning maybe slightly negative long term.
But what's really fascinating, pulling data from Into the Block, this came via the Crypto Basic and Pin2 News, is looking at the actual SHIB holders.
Okay. What about them?
Despite any recent price bounces, a huge majority are still out of the money.
Meaning they bought higher than the current price, so they're sitting on a loss.
Exactly. The numbers cited were around 81.25% of holders. That's over 1.17 million wallets currently in the red.
Wow, that's a huge percentage.
It is. Only about, 16% were in the money, meaning profitable.
But did they mention if that number changed recently?
Yeah, good point. They did note that the number in losses had decreased from the previous month, so that recent rebound did help some people climb back, but still, the vast majority remain underwater.
Okay, that gives us a pretty clear snapshot of where things stand. Now let's get into the predictions. The machines weigh in. AI is being used more and more for this stuff.
Right. And the sources consulted a few different models. Let's start with ChatGPT, according to Finbold. What was its take?
Okay, ChatGPT.
Its base case, sort of the most likely scenario for June 1st, 2025, was pretty stable. It saw the price bouncing between, say, 0.000000000000000001500.
So not much change predicted there on the base case. What's that based on?
Assumptions like Bitcoin staying stable, no huge market-moving news, and those, neutral technical signals like the RSI and MACD we just mentioned.
Basically, business as usual means price stays flat.
Yep.
Okay. Did it offer a more bullish outlook?
It did. It suggested SHIB could push higher, maybe up to the 0.000001650 to 0.00000001800 range.
Okay, that's a bit more interesting. But what needs to happen for that?
Well, it's conditional. It would need to break through key resistance levels, particularly around 0.00000000152, and the broader crypto market would need to catch some real upward momentum.
Gotcha. So dependent on market conditions and breaking technical levels. And the flip side, the bearish view.
Its downside scenario saw a potential drop to the 0.0001200 to 0.000001300 zone.
And the triggers for that.
According to ChatGPT, that could happen if Bitcoin takes a tumble, if the general hype around meme coins phase, maybe if the SHIB community itself loses engagement, or if technical signals turn decisively bearish.
Okay, so ChatGPT. Stable base, bullish if the market helps, bearish if things go south or the community cools off. How did Grok compare? Finbold looked at that one too.
Yeah, Grok. Its analysis seemed to put a bit more emphasis on external catalysts.
Okay.
Its bullish scenario was actually more ambitious than ChatGPT's. It projected a range of 0.0000022 to 0.000000025.
Whoa, okay, that's a bigger jump. What's driving that prediction?
Grok tied that specifically to strong adoption of Shibarium, that's SHIB's layer 2 network, plus really aggressive token burning, and again, needing a significant broader crypto rally.
Interesting. But did it say how likely that bullish breakout was?
It did, and this is key. It only assigned about a 20-25% chance to that big bullish move happening.
So quite optimistic, but not very confident it'll actually happen. What's its more likely scenario then?
Much closer to ChatGPT's neutral view, actually. Grok's more probable outcome was SHIB trading between 0.0000000 Lafroni and 0.00000 Zongtain.
Back down to earth a bit.
Yeah, based on things like a steady community, stable Bitcoin, and just sort of gradual, steady progress on Shibarium, not explosive growth.
Okay. And Grok's bearish risks, where could it fall?
It saw a potential drop to 0.0000000 when narrow 000 12. The risks it highlighted were things like rising global interest rates, increasing regulatory pressure on crypto.
Macro factors.
Exactly. And also, if Shibarium adoption disappoints, or if there's a technical breakdown in the charts that triggers panic selling.
It's really striking how both these AIs, ChatGPT and Grok, even with different ranges, both specifically mention sentiment, news, and community stuff as being super important for the SHIB.
Right. It feels like even the algorithms recognize that for meme coins or coins with strong communities, it's not just about the numbers on the chart. Sentiment can really drive things.
Yeah, that feels like a key takeaway already. Sentiment might even outweigh the technical sometimes here.
Seems that way. Now let's bring in Google Gemini. The Times tabloid reported on its outlook. How did it compare?
Okay, Gemini.
Gemini was notably more optimistic than the base cases from the other two AIs. Significantly so.
Oh, really? How optimistic?
It expected SHIB to trade quite a bit higher, forecasting a range of 0.0000025 all the way up to 0.00003 by June 1st, 2025.
1.3?
Yeah, with 0.00003 being its most likely target, apparently. That would be, potentially double the price we saw in late May.
Okay, that's a very different tune from the others' base cases.
Yeah.
What factors does Gemini point to for that kind of rise?
It mentioned general market trends, overall sentiment, there's that word again, SHIB's past behavior, and its nature as a meme coin, which often benefits from positive trends and hype, especially if Bitcoin is doing well.
Makes sense. Did it mention anything specific to SHIB itself?
Yes, it also flagged the potential positive impact of token burns and maybe accelerated burns coming from the Shiba Eternity game mode.
Okay, so we've got this real spectrum of AI predictions now, from basically flat to maybe slightly up to potentially doubling in price, all for the same date.
Exactly. It really highlights the uncertainty, doesn't it? And how much depends on which factors the model weighs most heavily. There's no single AI answer here.
Definitely not. So that's the big AI models. What about other sources? Maybe one's leaning more on traditional technical analysis.
Right. Sources like 3 Commas, which pull in analysis from places like Light Finance, Trading Beasts, Wallet Investor. They often provide price targets that are, much tighter and closer to SHIB's current levels at the time.
So less dramatic predictions.
Yeah, for June 1st, 2025, you might see predictions more in the ballpark of, say, 0.000000014 through 0.00030.
Very close to where it was.
Pretty much. And for the whole month of June, a similarly tight range, maybe 0.000001393 to 0.000101435. This lines up much more with those stable, neutral scenarios from ChatGPT and Grok, not Gemini's big jump.
And their method is different.
Often, yeah. It's frequently based on AI assisting with technical analysis of past price data. Sometimes that produces more conservative short-term forecasts compared to models trying to predict sentiment shifts or catalyst impacts.
Got it. So beyond just the price numbers, what are the actual factors the sources keep bringing up as influencing SHIB?
Okay, yeah, let's break those down. One that comes up again and again is token burns.
Right, the whole idea of destroying tokens to reduce supply.
Exactly, sending them to a dead wallet so they're gone forever. Theory is, less supply, same or growing demand means higher price per token due to scarcity.
And Outlook India had a pretty wild example of this, didn't they?
They did a massive 8,470% surge in the SHIB burn rate on March 25th, 2025.
8,000%.
Yeah. It was mainly down to one single wallet burning 1 billion SHIB tokens. which at the time was worth about $13,000. Apparently, this wallet had done big burns before, too.
Wow. Okay, an 8,000% jump sounds huge. Does that automatically mean the price rockets up?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
The expert opinion cited in these sources is really important here. They say, yes, big burns can cause a short-term price bump, and they definitely create scarcity on paper. But they often lack a lasting, significant impact on price, unless you also have consistent demand or strong fundamental reasons for people to hold SHIB. For long-term value, things like utility and adoption are usually seen as much more important.
That makes sense. You can burn tokens all day, but if nobody wants the remaining ones.
Precisely. And speaking of supply, even with all the burns, sources say over 410 trillion SHIB have been burned.
Which sounds like an enormous number.
It is, but it still leaves a total supply of around 589.5 trillion. That's still a massive, massive number of tokens compared to most other cryptos.
Yeah, that context is crucial. Which leads us neatly to the next factor: ecosystem development and utility.
Right. Are they building things people can actually use? The AI models, Grok and Gemini, did mention Shibarium adoption and that Shiba Eternity game burn mechanism as potential positives.
And some sources mention the TREAT token too, right? As part of expanding the ecosystem.
Yeah, TREAT is aimed at adding more utility within the Shiba Inu ecosystem. So these are efforts to build out actual functions beyond just trading the token.
But Gemini also threw some cold water on that, didn't it? Saying utility still lags.
It did. Compared to major established altcoins, Gemini's analysis suggested SHIB's real-world utility is still quite limited. And that lack of fundamental utility could hold back the price unless it's just being pumped by pure hype.
Which, as we know, doesn't usually last.
Exactly. And that connects perfectly to the next huge factor everyone points to: market sentiment and community influence.
This feels like the big one for SHIB.
It really is. ChatGPT and Grok both explicitly said that for an asset like this, things like news buzz, what influencers are saying, general crypto trends, that stuff can easily overpower the technical charts in the short term.
Remember that data point about holders. Most are losing money, but the sentiment is still bullish.
Yeah. The Crypto Basic and Pin2 News highlighted that. Despite being underwater, overall sentiment among holders seems to stay positive. That's the power of the community.
And markets.com really hammered this home, right, about social media.
Absolutely. They pointed to Twitter, Reddit, saying these platforms are crucial for drumming up interest, fueling speculation, and causing those rapid price swings based just on how people are feeling. Community engagement isn't just nice to have for SHIB, it's seen as vital.
Okay, so community and sentiment are huge.
Oh,
What else?
broader market conditions and macro factors. Can't ignore the wider world.
Like Bitcoin's influence.
Definitely. Multiple sources agree. What Bitcoin does really matters for SHIB, just like for most altcoins. If Bitcoin rallies, SHIB often follows. If Bitcoin dumps, SHIB usually feels the pain too.
And we saw that with the tariff news impacting it. External events matter.
For sure. Even global economic or political news can ripple through and hit speculative assets. Grok also flagged things like rising interest rates or regulatory crackdowns as potential drags on SHIB, probably by cooling down the whole crypto market.
And markets.com basically said the same broader stuff like inflation, regulation. It all adds to the volatility.
Yep. So it's a mix of internal SHIB factors and these big external forces.
Okay, now, here's something that really caught my eye from the sources, kind of a historical wrinkle. According to CryptoRank data via the Crypto Basic and Pin2 News, June hasn't exactly been SHIB's best month historically.
Ah, yes, the June effect. That is a really interesting pattern they highlighted.
What's the pattern look like?
Looking back over the past few years, SHIB has posted losses in June pretty consistently, like down 4.75% in June 2021, down 12% in June 2022, down 11.5% in June 2023.
And 2024.
A bigger drop, down 32.3% in June 2024.
Wow. So it's not just down, it's sometimes down significantly. What's the average?
The average loss across those Junes was 15.1%, and the median loss was 11.8%.
So if that historical pattern holds true for June 2025, we could potentially be looking at another double-digit decline.
The trend certainly suggests it's a possibility. It's definitely a potential headwind blowing against some of those more bullish AI forecasts we talked about.
Now, obviously, past performance doesn't guarantee future results.
Absolutely not. There's no fundamental law saying SHIB must drop in June. but it's a striking historical pattern that you probably want to be aware of if you're looking at that time frame.
Yeah, definitely something to keep in mind. Okay, let's shift gears slightly. Just briefly touch on the longer term. Some analyses look out further, right? Like 3 commas citing wallet investor.
Yeah, some of those longer term models, often based on extrapolating trends, suggest prices might, stay within similar ranges or maybe see only very gradual slight increases out to 2030.
So no moonshot predicted there.
Not in those specific models. One analysis mentioned a potential higher maximum price, maybe around 0.00000187 to 2, but that was looking way out to 2035. So still relatively modest growth over a very long time horizon.
Which brings us to that big, ambitious target everyone talks about in the SHIB community, hitting $1. Markets.com tackled that one.
They did, and they really focused on the core challenge, which is just the sheer scale of the token supply.
All those trillions of tokens.
Exactly. For SHIB to reach $1 per token, it's market capitalization. The total value of all SHIB would have to explode to an absolutely astronomical level. We're talking potentially far, far bigger than Bitcoin or Ethereum's market cap has ever been.
Which sounds pretty unlikely in the current crypto world, right?
It raises serious questions about feasibility, let's put it that way. The analysis consistently circles back to the idea that for any realistic shot at significant long-term growth, let alone $1, SHIB needs sustained, widespread adoption.
And real-world utility.
Fundamental real-world utility, something much more substantial than just speculation and community hype, which is still its primary driver today.
Okay. So let's try and pull all these threads together. We've gone through a lot. What does this deep dive really tell us about SHIB heading into June 2025?
Well, I think the clearest thing is the wide range of possibilities. We've seen predictions suggesting stability or even potential declines, especially if you factor in that historical June trend or look at pure technical analysis.
But then you have other outlooks, especially from some AI models like Gemini or the bullish scenarios from ChatGPT and Grok that see potential for real upside.
Crucially, though, that upside is almost always tied directly to external factors. Things like overall market momentum picking up, those token burns continuing aggressively, or tangible progress on ecosystem developments like Shibarium actually gaining traction.
So the sources really highlight a few key battlegrounds influencing the price.
Definitely. You've got the AI predictions themselves, which people watch. You have technical indicators, although maybe less impactful here than for other assets. You have the token burns, which create buzz, but maybe not lasting value alone.
Then there's the ecosystem development, Shibarium, TREAT, etc., trying to build that utility.
Absolutely vital is the market sentiment and the power of that community hype. Then the broader crypto market, especially Bitcoin's movements. And finally, those external macro factors like economics and regulation.
And that historical June pattern just looms there as a potential negative data point.
It does. And looking further out, that dream of $1 seems incredibly challenging, purely because of the massive token supply. It would require unprecedented market cap growth, driven by real utility that just isn't there on a large scale yet.
So ultimately, if you're trying to understand issues potential, you have to weigh this really complex mix. It's technicals, AI forecasts, community passion, market wins.
And a healthy dose of acknowledging the inherent volatility and risk that comes with assets driven so heavily by speculation and sentiment. It's not for the faint of heart.
Indeed. Well, thank you for joining us for this deep dive.
Always interesting to unpack these things.
And here's a final thought for you, the listener, to chew on. We've seen how much SHIB's price, and even the AI predictions about it, seem to depend on shifting sentiment, on news, on hype generated by the community and influencers. So the question is, how much real influence do these complex models and forecasts actually have on an asset like SHIB? Or are they mostly just reflecting and maybe even amplifying the very unpredictable human and social forces that truly seem to be in the driver's seat? Something to think about.